Hello, welcome to another weekly update. It's kind of interesting. One of the first things I'm going to talk about is Microsoft Ignite this week, because Microsoft Ignite is coming around again. And in a way that kind of features in some of the other entries for this week, because it's definitely a slowing of news, I think. It feels like things are being held back for Ignite, and we often see that around big conferences. Teams like to announce things at these conferences, so we often see a slowing of news in the run up to big events. So let's talk about that first then. So Microsoft Ignite is happening again, and it's happening March 2nd, 3rd and 4th, so a couple of weeks time. This is an odd time for Ignite, really. It's quite close to Build, which is generally in May time. And we have already had an Ignite relatively recently, sort of November time last year. But at that event, which was obviously online only, Microsoft did say that they were going to do things slightly differently. And they were going to have a slightly smaller event and then another top-up event kind of later on. And this is that top-up event. So I remember at the time when the kind of original, the OG Ignite happened in 2020, thinking, actually, there's loads and loads of news here. This does not feel like a mini event. So it's interesting to see what the top-up event will be like, whether that's also the same size in terms of announcements, or whether it is slightly smaller, whether it's more focused on specific areas or what. So we'll just have to wait and see. We're in uncharted waters. We've never done anything we've never had anything like this before, where we've had an event essentially split over 2 dates. So yeah, it will be interesting. It'll be interesting as well to see it so close to Build. Both of those things happening really in the same, obviously in the same half of the year, probably aligned roughly with the same kind of delivery sort of cycles that internally teams have, and it might just be different product teams presenting information. But we'll just have to wait and see. So that's actually kind of the first thing I wanted to call out this week is the MyIgnite homepage, so myignite.microsoft.com, because if you haven't yet done so, you really should register for this round of Ignite. You need to register again. It's not like they won't hold your registration from the November event or anything like that, so you need to go and re-register. And you can, it's going to be online only, just to be clear. You can also, I think, experience the keynote in mixed reality using AltSpace VR if you want to. I've had some experience with AltSpace VR, and one of the other conferences has done it, which has been brilliant. So you don't need special VR equipment to take part in that. You can do it with just a PC, like a fairly powerful PC, has to be said, but yeah, that might be worth looking at. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. Microsoft Ignite, make sure you get registered. Second thing, and I did talk about this last time, so you will have already heard me talking about this. It's the announcement that Microsoft Edge is going away, and what that means to native audio-video capabilities for Skype Web SDK. I covered it quite a lot last time, so I won't kind of go over in huge detail this time, other than just to say there's a blog post about it now. If you want something to reference, you can do that. And I kind of talk through what you might do if you're a developer in this space and you're reliant on that Skype Web SDK for doing AV stuff. You do have some options, I think. It's a bit hard to tell. So there is a plugin, like a fallback plugin, you should be able to use, although it's kind of unclear whether or not it's still supported by modern day browsers. So there are some questions there, some testing to do for sure. But you've kind of got to get your skates on, because Edge is going away really soon, April, I believe. So those are those two things. Next one is kind of really interesting, and actually probably will be a blog post again as well. So you're hearing about it here first. And that is the fact that you can now pop out apps in Microsoft Teams. So I don't know if you've seen this. You might see this coming to a client near you soon. You'll be able to, the apps that you load in Microsoft Teams, you'll actually be able to pop them out into their own windows, move them around, move them onto your second screen if you have one, very much in the same way that you can with chats today. You can also do that with tabs. And so both of those actually really unlock a couple of things. They kind of unlock some things and they kind of confuse some things. So here's kind of my thoughts on them. I haven't written this up yet. I'm still kind of thinking about what I think about this. I think it's a good thing because many of us are at home now and we have multiple monitors. We can be more productive if we can lay our stuff out differently and better, and we can reference things whilst we're, talking about them and stuff like that. So I think it makes sense to be able to pop these things out and move them around. So I think that's a good thing. In some ways, I think it's a little confusing because it takes away some of the essence of kind of collaborate, like your data and your information being where your collaboration is. Because if you've popped it out into a separate app, why not just have it in a separate app? Why bring it into Teams? The advantage in bringing it into Teams is that it's being displayed appropriately next to where you're having those conversations. So for me, I think there's a value in keeping the information in the right place alongside. So things like in meeting experiences and messaging extensions to bring the data to where the conversation is happening. But I kind of also get that for larger applications, it might make sense just to break them out into their own window. So choice is good. It's worth noting at the moment, this is a user-led action, so apps can't pop themselves out or anything like that. There's no kind of API support for any of that stuff. Maybe we'll see that come, I don't know, but that might be nice. But right now, you kind of pop it out yourself. I also don't think there's any memory associated with that. So once you've popped it out, if you kind of close that app and go back to it next week, it's not going to open popped out. It's going to open as it was, and you then pop it out. So that's apps, and I'm racing through these. It's going to be a really quick one this week because I've left it last minute, and there's a million things going on, and all sorts of things. So it's going to definitely be a quick one this week. But like I say, there's not actually tons and tons of news, so it's good to just kind of cover off the things that are new and have changed as well. So that's a new functionality that is coming. It's rolling out now. There's a blog post on Tech Community about it. I'll put a link to, so you can read about it and then go and look for it in your client. And if it's not there, it will be showing up soon. The last thing I do want to talk about though is it's kind of a blog post. Doesn't specifically affect developers, but it does affect Microsoft Teams. And it's of interest, of technical interest, if you like, around Microsoft Teams and calling and communications. And that's a new codec that is being rolled out for Microsoft Teams calls. It's called Satin, and it replaces Silk, and it is AI powered, whatever that means. So let's have a quick look. There's a whole blog post about it. I'm just going to share my screen so we can go through it together. And let's have a look. All right, so this is on the Microsoft Tech Community blog post. And it's by this person, Gijar Dani, Principal PM Manager, and also Srinivasam, Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. And so this is kind of interesting. So it's talking about the Silk codec first, which, don't know if you remember, like aware of the history, it came from Skype actually. It came from Skype Consumer. Came from outside of Microsoft, brought it in, and was kind of embraced by Microsoft as a kind of a replacement, and became the basis of the Teams codecs today. So this is a kind of a new version of that, if you like. It's a reimagining of that, and there's all sorts of fun things you can do in here. So you can listen to these examples of what different calls sound like at these specific rates with different codecs, so you can see this stuff. Interesting, the AI bit is kind of interesting. So basically what they're doing is taking bits out of the speech panel, I think, and kind of adding things back in where they're missing, and just reconstructing the signal. This is quite a nice way of thinking about it. They analyze it, they work out what they can take away, they encode it, they then decode it, and they put things back together again. And it's kind of really interesting. I really like the fact that there's deep engineering that's gone into this to make this whole thing better. It's kind of interesting to read through technically how it happened, and it's good to see that. So the problem they're addressing is really resiliency on things like Wi-Fi, which is subject to packet loss because people walk away from their routers and stuff. So there's that kind of packet loss that happens. And apparently Satin is very well positioned to compensate for this. It'll be interesting to see, though, whether, and this is kind of one of those unintended side effects of technology, because what they're doing is adding in AI to put the packets back that are missing. So you lose some packets and Satin will put them back again. So you don't know that you're losing packets. So what might happen actually is we have less instances of where people drop out as they wander away from their router, and they kind of chop out and then they chop back in again, and it'll be fine, and then they'll just disappear because they reach the point, right, where there's only so much like packet reconstruction you can do. If it's gone, it's gone. So I think that'll be quite interesting to see how that works in the real world, and once it rolls out. It is already, apparently, according to this blog post, it's already being used for all Teams and Skype two-party calls. I have no way of verifying that. I suppose I could go and look through some CDR sessions to know whether that's true, but that's what's written here. And it also says it will roll out for Teams meetings soon. So interesting. So I don't know if you've noticed any difference in voice quality or anything like that, but maybe if you have, that might be why. It's due to new codecs being used. All right, that's everything I wanted to talk about this week. Like I say, super short one. Keeping it kind of under 15 minutes if I can. But just a couple of things to talk about. Like I say, Ignite is coming soon. Next week, I'll try and focus on things that we might be looking forward to for Ignite, things we might be expecting. There's also some other things I think probably coming that we can talk about and blog about. So lots of interesting things going on still, very fast moving pace of change still in the Teams developer platform space, and that's exciting. All right, that's enough from me. Have a great weekend, whatever it is you're doing, and I will talk to you again next time.